that was not universally popular in Whitehall, but we got through the House of Commons with a significant majority. I will not take no for an answer. I will deliver for all of those voters who voted for us in the first time in 2019 and all of our other voters. I will make sure we deliver on our promises. And we will open up new opportunities across the north. We will deliver for people, and we will take on successfully at the next election yet another Labour leader from North London, and we will take on Andy Burnham and his negative, anti-growth, anti-success attitude. And my friends, we will unleash opportunity across Britain, and we will unleash opportunity here in the North West, and we will win the next election. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, that was quite a start, wasn't it, ladies and gentlemen? The pitch then from the Foreign Secretary, following the pitch from the former Chancellor of the Exchequer. So let's get started now with the questioning bit. First of all, from me, and as I said right at the very beginning, much more importantly, from all of these good people, Conservative members from Manchester and thereabouts, here live tonight. So, first up, please welcome back onto the stage the former Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rishi Sunak.
Thank you.
My purpose tonight is to go through 3 or 4 substantial areas, hopefully asking stuff that you haven't commented upon, and subsequently I'll do exactly the same with Liz, but to get through that in about 12 minutes' time, and then it's up to these good people out here. You got a big round of applause when you spoke earlier on about law and order, and during the campaign you've made a great deal about sexual exploitation and especially the grooming gangs, not least in Rochdale. But when an 87-year-old man can be killed in his mobility scooter in broad daylight in London, we need more than just words. Isn't it time to put the politicians directly back in charge of law and order, of policing in this country, dispense with the police and crime commissioners, and really let the politicians rip on this issue?
Well, I think, actually, when it comes to police and crime commissioners, we've actually done very well as a Conservative Party, something we should be very proud of. I know Andrew will be proud of it, because we do extraordinarily well at winning those elections, and that's because we are the party that is trusted on law and order, and it's something that the Labour Party is not. But we can't lose that position, so that's why I talk about it. And it's about putting more police officers on the streets. But I think it goes beyond that, and that's what I was talking about when it comes to stop and search with Andy Burnham. It's why I want to tackle the issue that all of you know is more pervasive in our country than we care to admit, and we don't talk about it enough, and that is the issue of grooming gangs, because it's awful. The crimes that these people commit are pernicious. They affect girls as young as my 2 daughters, and I want to be tough on it. And that means we need to have a new unit at the National Crime Agency. We need to actually record the ethnicity of the people doing this, that we don't do today, and that is wrong.
Sure.
And
I know that, and with due respect, you've said that, and you're on the record about it. What I haven't heard from you is what you're going to do to make our streets safer, like the 87-year-old man stabbed to death in his mobility scooter.
Yeah, well,
practical approaches from Camp Sunak.
Yeah, so tackling knife crime comes stop and search is the thing that we know makes an enormous difference. It's actually the powers that we are trialling in other areas in the country that allow the police to stop and search previously convicted knife criminals, which actually I want to bring here to Greater Manchester, because it would make a difference, because knife crime here is among the highest in the country. And as I said in my speech previously, and I stand by it, we should not let political correctness stand in the way of keeping people safe.
And that means putting the Justice Secretary in charge of parole boards and an elected politician overruling a parole board if needs be, if a sentence is being softened or someone's being let out early.
It means toughening up our sentencing, but particularly, and this is actually very relevant for knife crime, actually everyone should know this, right? So 50% of the convictions in our country are committed by less than 10% of criminals. Right? So there is a small group of people who disproportionately account for the crime in our country. Now, the average number of crimes that these people commit, just so you know, is 19. Right? And I think all of us, compassionate Conservatives, believe in giving people a second chance. Probably we believe in maybe even giving them a third chance. But we don't believe in giving them a 19th chance, do we? Right? So we need to toughen up sentencing for these types of criminals.
On the National Health Service, got applause on that when you spoke earlier as well. You say you want to call out poor leadership, but many feel that the NHS itself, love it as we all do, has become a system that's simply not fit for purpose. Isn't it time for a profound restructuring and for you to say, if you're Prime Minister, not a penny more until it's functioning properly, meeting targets and achieving better outcomes?
Yeah, so I've already, I mean, Alistair, that's broadly what I have said. Because, look, the NHS is the service that people most rely on. And it is something that we have to be trusted on. And it's something that's under enormous strain.
So you've been clear on the ambitions, you haven't been clear on the reforms.
Yes, I have been, right? So let me give you one example. I will give you one example of a reform. Because if we are not prepared to be bold and radical about making the NHS more efficient, we will never be able to get better quality healthcare. We'll never be able to get people's taxes down responsibly. So here's one thing that I'm just going to say to you now, out of the many things I want to do, to give you a sense of what I want to do. And that is to tackle an issue that we all know exists, but we haven't done anything about for a long time that costs us. And that is the issue of missed NHS appointments, right? Last year, and I see lots of nodding because you all agree and you see it, 15 million missed appointments in the NHS, not just at GP surgeries, but at hospitals too. Now, not only does that not value our doctors, it also deprives people of the care that they urgently need. So if we can get tough on missed appointments, then that's not about making money. What this is about is changing behaviour in this country, so that's not acceptable. Because if people cancel these appointments in advance, what do? We suddenly free up all this extra healthcare, all these extra appointments to get the backlogs down quicker, get people seen, and it has not cost a person here a penny in extra taxes.
Sure.
Now, that is an example of something bold and radical that lots of people will say, oh gosh, it can't be done, or it's too tough. But if we're not prepared to get radical on the NHS, get efficiency out of it, we will never reform it, and I will never cut your taxes, and that's what I want to do as Prime Minister.
Let me try and tempt you to be radical on something else as well on the health service. A lot of people in this room and listening to this conversation will have scrimped and saved from their hard-earned money to buy private health insurance so that they can get to what they need sooner and, funnily enough, alleviate some of the pressures on the NHS. Would you, as a former Chancellor, consider giving tax relief to the people who decide private health is the way for them to go?
Yeah. So, I mean, when it comes to tax policy, it's something that's been pitched to me in the past, and I'd happily look at it. But I'm not sure that is going to move the needle when you think about the vast majority of how people use the NHS. If we want proper NHS reform, at the margin, people moving to the private sector isn't going to change the overall dynamics. But I do want to learn from the private sector, right? I have a background in business. Yeah. Now look at how the private sector does elective surgery for hip and knee operations. Those are very routine operations. The private sector does them very effectively in surgical hubs. And I want to replicate that model in the NHS. Change how we do that type of surgery. It's something that the doctors really prefer. They're far more efficient during the day. They can crack through many more operations. And again, it's not about more money. It's about bringing a different mindset, a private sector mindset to the NHS. And I want to roll out those surgical hubs across the country because that's how we'll get the backlogs down. That's how we'll get people Treated better. And that's how we'll reform the NHS. But these are some practical ideas. That's what I'm going to do.
That's what I wanted. On immigration and what's going on day in, day out in the English Channel, on the French coast and in Dover, you said just a few minutes ago, it's wrong. You're clear on your attitude towards the Convention on Human Rights. You're clear about wanting to reform it. But isn't it time for you also, perhaps tonight, to embrace your supporter, David Davis's plan to instruct Border Force and the Royal Navy to push those floating dinghies back?
Yeah. So, look, first of all, there's a reason I mentioned this up front. Because, look, I sit here in front of you all as a result of our country's unbelievably proud, compassionate history in welcoming people to our shores. But that has to be done legally. It has to be done fairly, because if it's not, it undermines trust in the system. And every time someone sees a boat coming here, it means that they trust our migration system less, and it means that they're less willing to support us welcoming people who genuinely need to be here. And that's why we must fix it. It's part of why I voted for Brexit, proudly. Now, what do we have to do? Now, look, David's idea, many others have said that as well, and as the Prime Minister's already said, no option should be off the table with regard to that. It is trickier to implement that in the Channel, and given the boats that we're faced with, compared to how the Australians do it where they are. But look, no option should be off the table. But again, in the interest of being practical here and not just talking in abstract, let me give you two very specific things out of my 10-point plan, which is online for those of you who want to go and have a look at it, that I want to do. The first is very quickly move away from the European definition of what an asylum seeker is. Because it is too broad, it gets exploited by lefty lawyers and means that we can't send people back who shouldn't be here. We can move to a different convention, and we should do it as soon as possible. That's the first thing. And if you want one other thing on that, I tell you, we've got to toughen up our foreign policy. Because at the moment, we have a situation which you will find, I found it bonkers. We will go to a country, we'll talk to them about a trade deal that we want to do with them, right? We'll also potentially be giving them actual foreign aid. But at the same time, we don't say to them, hang on, you need to take back your failed asylum seekers. Well, that's clearly wrong. So we've got to get tougher with our foreign policy and join those things up. Because when people shouldn't be here, we must be able to send them back. It's as simple as that, and I will do whatever it takes to make it work.
I want to end on a big question, and if I've got time after that, a couple of rapid-fire ones. But the big one is this. Take you back to the heady days of your spring statement, which you will remember, I'm sure, in which I jotted down, as a reporter, one of the standout comments, which was, I can't do everything, you said within that statement. And then in your May's lecture, which I also listened to and read very, very closely, you said, and I quote, we can't accept these levels of public spending as the new norm. If you win and lead this party and become our next Prime Minister, you can redefine what it means to be a post-Johnson Conservative in the 21st century. Smaller state rather than bigger state. Lower levels of spending rather than endless levels of spending. What is the Sunak vision of how Britain should be through Conservative eyes?
Well, I mean, you framed it very specifically in the context of what the government should do, because that's also a very big question. But the answer to that question for me is very simple, right? It starts with what I said at the dispatch box, actually last year. And I was the first cabinet minister to actually say this, and I'm sure all of you will agree with it. But that's because we're Conservatives. And what I said was, very simply and plainly, because it needed saying, is that government can't do everything. But more than that, government shouldn't do everything. We are Conservatives. We believe in personal responsibility. We believe in families. We believe in communities. And yes, COVID happened, but that is not the norm. We've got to be willing to actually just make the argument, because the pressure is always there. And as that's what you've seen over the last 2 years, that's not me. I don't wake up every morning and when a problem comes my way think, oh, well, how can the government spend some money to solve this problem? That is wrong. That's not what a Conservative government should do, and that is not what I will do as Prime Minister.
My final question, and you and Liz both know I don't do gotcha moments. I hate it and I loathe it and I don't go for it at all. But I was listening very carefully to your opening video, Underdog. As a Southampton Football Club fan, how do you get back to winning ways?
Well, Well, unpopular for saying it here, starting by beating United this weekend. There we go.
My producer said you should ask him what's the most difficult job at the moment, to become Prime Minister or manager of Manchester United.
Well, I tell you, no, look, I have been out and about, as you saw in that video, across the country, and I've spoken to thousands of our members. It's so wonderful to see so many of you here tonight, and wherever I'm going, I find that my message is resonating. I am winning the argument about tackling inflation, being responsible with our borrowing, about actually supporting vulnerable people this autumn and winter, which my plan will do, Liz's plan does not do, about actually reforming our tax system so it delivers growth, right? And everyone here I heard, and we should talk about it in the Q&A, applauding Liz on corporation tax. We should talk about it, because everyone applauding, I want to persuade you that you're wrong. Right? Everyone applauding the fact that we should cancel the NHS levy and have our kids borrow and pay the bill for that. I want to tell you that you're wrong.
Right, I'm going to stop you right there, because let's see if that's what they
all
want
I'd say is, wherever I go, I'm finding it's resonating, and all I can say to everyone here is I will fight till the last day of this contest, and I plan to keep going until the end.
Rishi Sunak, ladies and gentlemen.